Well, hey there. I'm going to show you how to do the Milesian stitch when you do it in an alternating way. And it looks very different when you alternate it. It's a really nice, tight, textured stitch. And I'm using a worsted weight on a 5/8 inch gauge. And so I'll let you see what it looks like, and we'll flip it over, and you can see the other side doesn't curl at all. You can see how completely flat it is, and I just used a standard knit and I knit back to do the edge, and there we go, no purls at all, and really nice and flat. Pretty fast stitch to do. And I'm going to show you the yarn. The yarn is this Aurora yarn, and it's in the color Currant, and this is it. It is, I got it at Walmart. That's where I got the yarn. It's an acrylic yarn, number 4, and it's all these shades of blue and purple. A really pretty yarn. So that's the yarn I'm using here. And so this is done, and we're alternating the stitch, and also I'm doing something in the round, so I'll show you what it looks like in the round using the alternating stitch. It looks like this in the round, so it's a very nice stitch too. And the other side looks good, just like it does on the flat panel. There it is. So that's the hat, and I will be doing a video of the hat. So there you go. And again, this is just what it looks like on the back. Looks really nice in the back if you want to make a reversible piece. Okay, so it's a stitch video. I'm not going to show you everything, but I am going to show you enough tips that you'll be able to make a project in it. And it's very easy to make a project in a stitch that's so flat like this, because you can do any edge you want. I'll show you the edge I'm doing. I like it because the pattern goes all the way to the edge, like that. And it even looks like it goes all the way down to the bottom. So how I did that is I just cast on with a chain cast on, and that cast on is on my channel. I'll put a link there so you'll be able to easily go to it if you want to use this cast on, but any cast on will work with this stitch. I just did one row of owl eye stitch, and I have a lot of owl eye stitches on my channel, so it'll be really easy to find that stitch if you want to do one row and you haven't seen the stitch yet. I'll show you how I did the sides, and the sides look like this. Nice and tight, just like the cast on. So how I set up my loom. I set up my loom with uneven pegs because I'm going to be alternating the stitch. And then I have my 2 end pegs here. And then how I set it up was I had an unmarked peg with a marked peg, unmarked, marked, unmarked, marked, and all the way down, and I ended with unmarked, which is the same way I started here. So I'm starting with unmarked, ending with unmarked, and that's why it's uneven, and I have 1 each for the end pegs. So uneven plus your end pegs. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do the stitch, and then I'm not going to do the edge this time. We're going to start where I would be starting it to go this way. So when I'm starting it, I'm always starting it on red. So this red and this white are going together, and all the way along until this red and this white go together. So these are the 2 stitches right here that go together. When I come back, I will be starting the stitch with this red one, so that it'll be this red and white that go together. So I've alternated it. Instead of this red and white going together, I've got this red and white going together. So that's how I've alternated it. Okay, that's why it's set up like this. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start on this red stitch to do the stitch. Very easy stitch. Now there's a little button on the computer, the lower right hand corner, and you'll be able to slow down the video if you need to. Be a little bit different on your mobile phone, but there'll be a way to do it, and I believe the way is probably different on different phones. or on perhaps different systems, but it will be there. Okay, so on the first stitch of the 2 peg pair, so whatever peg pair you're working on, and right now I'm working on a marked peg with an unmarked peg. The marked peg's number 1, the unmarked peg we'll call number 2 peg in the pairs we're working. So the first peg, we go over and do a U-wrap. Okay, and we do it fairly loosely. We come back over, re-wrap that first peg, wrap the second peg loosely, and knit them over. And then you come back in between the two and wrap over the second peg and knit it again. So it's basically just doing an ally stitch on these 2 pegs, but I showed you the mechanics of how you do the stitch. Then you take the working yarn and you're going to come around and go in between the 2 stitches around the number 1. I'm going to go in between the 2 stitches around the number 1 and then around the number 2. And then just knit them off. And that's it. That's the Milesian stitch. So then we come to the next 2 peg pair and we're going to go over number 1 peg in a U-wrap and knit it over. And we're going to come around and in front of both 1 and 2, nice and loose. You can see it's nice and loose here. And we're just going to knit those off. And then we're going to come around and rewrap the number 2 peg and knit it off. So each of these pegs is getting 2 U-wraps, but the way the U-wrap is done is you're going around and in front of the peg. So when you are U-wrapping more than once on a peg, the direction matters. Okay, now you're going to take this working yarn, go in between the 2, in front of 1, come back in between, in front of 2, and it's one style of doing a figure 8. There's a number of figure 8 variations. And then you're just going to knit them over. Next 2 peg pair with a marked peg and an unmarked peg, and you're going to go over it, knit, come back in front of it, and in front of the number 2 peg, nice and loose, knit them over. And then come back, knit number 2, knit it over, in between, around, into your figure 8, and knit it off. And that's all there is to it. It's done on 2 pegs. You just keep going, and you just make sure on your row 2 you alternate which 2 pegs you wrap. So it's very easy. Now if you didn't alternate them, you would get the stitch, and I've made a video of that, of what it looks like when you don't alternate it, and you get a more lacy stitch, and you could use that in a hat and a cowl, or for a scarf too, if you wanted to lace your scarf, or even a shawl. But anyway, go over, peg 1, around, over peg 1 and 2, knit them off, and then we do the figure 8, like that, and knit it. Next 2 pegs, knit, come around, knit over the 2, knit, and we'll just go all the way to the end. You can watch me try to do this nice and slow so you can see it. And now we're coming to the end. Here's our last 3 pegs. So I'm going to wrap this peg, the 2 peg pair, and we're done wrapping it. So we come over and I'm going to do a U-wrap on the end peg. If you like to slip your stitches, you could do it now, but I'm not going to. I like the tighter edge of doing it this way. I'm going to come back and knit like this. And then I'm just going to come back and knit this peg. because I'm going to be starting here. So I just want to do a kind of stitch that'll blend in. So I'm just going to knit over it, and I'm just going to do one more knit like that. So here's what my edge will look like. It's just going to blend right in. Okay, so here's your number 1 peg, and you're going to do your first wrap on it, and then you're going to wrap over 1 and 2, do your second wrap on 2, and then come back. You're going to come in between the 2, in front of peg 1, and then over peg 2. So as you see, our red pegs are still peg 1, and our unmarked are still peg 2. So we go over peg 1, over peg 1 and 2, knit them off, over peg 2, knit it, come in between the 2, wrap peg 1, come over, wrap peg 2, knit over. Okay, so I'm just going to work to the end of the row doing the same thing, and we will catch up there. Okay, so here I am near the end of the row, and again I'm going to do the red and knit over it, come over peg 1 and 2, knit over them, come in between around like that, knit it off, and then I'm just going to come over and do my edge stitch, which I always do pretty loosely. I have this nice and loose, come back, knit it over, and then we're going to start here again. So we just need to find a way of making this peg blend in. It's going to blend in pretty easy because it was part of the stitch on this pass. So if we knit it once like this, come around, knit it twice, it's got the owl eye part of the stitch, just not the figure 8. So it's only missing one knit on it. So it will just blend in at the edge. Okay, so then we come over to do peg 1 and 2, over 1, over 1 and 2, in between to do the figure 8, to the back, around to the front, and knit it off. And that's all there is to it, and you just keep going. And that was a really easy edge I showed you because, as you see, it just goes right to the edge, lays really flat. Every stitch is really quite big because you're doing 3 knits on every peg. So it goes together really, really fast. A little bit tongue-tied there, but yes, it goes together really, really fast. Has a really nice texture, and I did want to show you that before I end the video, but I don't know if I can get it to really show. But here we go. We'll zoom in a little bit here, and as you can see, it really does have a really nice texture to it. Lots of texture. And the other side also has a lot of texture. So it's nice if you want a nice close knit that isn't holey and you want a lot of texture to it and you want a stitch that knits up fast. You don't need any purls with it. So it's good for all those people that have a hard time doing purls, people with one arm, or perhaps who have arthritis more in one hand or the other and find it hard, or even with shoulder pains, hard to pull up to do either true knit or purl. It's a really fast, easy stitch that will really be easy for anyone to do. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the video, and the hat video will be coming out too, and you'll be able to see how it works in a hat. And okay then, happy knitting, and until I see you next time, bye.